Staying productive in a workplace filled with constant meetings is one of the most common challenges professionals face today. Many people want to do focused, meaningful work, yet their calendars are shaped by routines they did not design and expectations they did not set. When a manager relies heavily on meetings for visibility, reassurance, or habit, the workday becomes fragmented, and the ability to think deeply declines. This book explores why that happens, how those patterns form, and what you can do to protect your time without creating conflict or appearing uncooperative. The goal is not to eliminate meetings. The goal is to understand which meetings matter, which ones can be replaced, and how to communicate in ways that reduce unnecessary interruptions. You will learn how to manage up with clarity, how to use asynchronous tools effectively, and how to build personal systems that make your progress visible without constant check-ins. Each chapter gives practical strategies that work in real organizations, even when the culture is slow to change. By the end of this audiobook, you will have a set of tools that help you navigate meeting-heavy environments with confidence. You will understand the psychology behind meeting habits, the hidden costs of interruptions, and the small adjustments that create large improvements in productivity. Most importantly, you will be able to reclaim the focus needed for high-quality work while maintaining strong relationships with the people who depend on you. Chapter 1: The Hidden Costs of Constant Meetings. Meetings shape the structure of most modern workdays, but when they become too frequent, they quietly erode the time required for meaningful progress. Each meeting forces your mind to shift away from the task you are focused on, and that shift requires more effort than most people realize. The more often this happens, the harder it becomes to maintain momentum, especially on work that depends on sustained concentration. Over time, the day turns into a sequence of short, disconnected intervals rather than a continuous stretch of productive effort. This fragmentation affects not only the speed of your work but also the quality of your thinking. Tasks that once required deep focus are pushed aside in favor of smaller, easier items that can survive constant interruptions. Creativity also declines because ideas need uninterrupted space to develop, and meetings repeatedly cut that space into pieces. Even simple tasks take longer because every restart requires you to rebuild the mental context you lost. These patterns accumulate quietly, and many professionals do not recognize the impact until deadlines tighten or quality begins to slip. The loss of deep work is one of the most significant consequences of meeting overload. Deep work requires long, uninterrupted stretches of time where your mind can fully engage with a problem. When your calendar is filled with recurring meetings, status updates, and ad hoc syncs, those stretches disappear. What remains are pockets of time too short to tackle complex tasks, so you shift toward work that is easier to start and stop. This shift may feel productive in the moment, but it gradually reduces your ability to produce high-quality results. Another hidden cost is the mental fatigue created by constant context switching. Every time you move from focused work to a meeting, your brain must disengage from one mode of thinking and adjust to another. This transition is not instantaneous. It consumes cognitive energy, and the more often it happens, the more drained you feel by the end of the day. Even short meetings can have a disproportionate impact because the recovery time afterward is often longer than the meeting itself. When this cycle repeats throughout the day, your overall capacity for thoughtful work declines. Meetings also influence how teams communicate and make decisions. When meetings become the default method for sharing updates, people begin to rely on them instead of using clearer, more efficient channels. This creates a culture where information is scattered across conversations rather than documented in a structured way. As a result, decisions take longer, misunderstandings increase, and more meetings are scheduled to clarify what should have been clear from the start. The cycle reinforces itself, and the organization becomes dependent on synchronous communication even when it is unnecessary. The emotional impact of meeting overload is often overlooked. Many professionals feel pressure to attend every meeting because they worry about how declining might be perceived. They fear appearing disengaged, uncooperative, or difficult to manage. This fear is amplified in hierarchical environments where pushing back against a meeting request can feel like challenging authority. As a result, people accept invitations even when the meeting adds little value, and the cost is absorbed quietly in the form of lost time and reduced focus. Career anxiety also plays a role. Some employees attend meetings not because they are needed, but because they believe visibility is tied to advancement. They worry that skipping a meeting might cause them to miss important information or appear less committed than their peers. This mindset leads to over-participation, where presence becomes a substitute for meaningful contribution. Over time, this behavior reinforces the belief that being in the room is more important than producing results, and the cycle becomes difficult to break. Another subtle consequence of meeting overload is the normalization of waste. When teams become accustomed to spending large portions of their day in meetings, they stop questioning whether those meetings are necessary. The behavior becomes part of the culture, and people accept it as the way work is done. This normalization makes it harder to introduce more efficient practices because the existing habits feel familiar and safe. Changing them requires not only new tools but also a shift in mindset. The opportunity cost of meetings is often invisible but significant. Every hour spent in a meeting is an hour not spent on tasks that require focus, creativity, or strategic thinking. When meetings interrupt these tasks, the total time lost is greater than the duration of the meeting itself. This cost compounds across teams, especially when multiple people are pulled into the same recurring sessions. Over the course of a year, a single weekly meeting can consume dozens of hours that could have been used for higher value work. Meetings also create delays in workflows. When progress depends on information that is only shared during scheduled meetings, tasks stall until the next session. This creates bottlenecks that slow down entire projects. Even short delays can have ripple effects, especially in collaborative environments where one person's progress affects the work of others. These delays are rarely attributed to meetings, but they contribute to missed deadlines and increased stress. Understanding these hidden costs is the first step toward reclaiming your time. When you can identify how meetings affect your focus, energy, and output, you can begin to make more intentional choices about how you spend your day. This awareness allows you to communicate more effectively with your manager, propose alternatives that preserve productivity, and build habits that protect your deep work. The goal is not to eliminate meetings entirely, but to ensure that the ones you attend genuinely support your work rather than disrupt it. By recognizing the impact of meeting overload, you gain the clarity needed to navigate a meeting-heavy environment with more control. You can begin to shift your workflow toward practices that support sustained focus, clearer communication, and better outcomes. This chapter lays the foundation for the strategies that follow, helping you understand why meetings feel overwhelming and what you can do to reduce their impact without creating conflict. With this understanding, you are better equipped to make decisions that protect your time and improve the quality of your work. Chapter 2: Why traditional managers rely on meetings. Understanding why certain managers depend heavily on meetings is essential if you want to reduce unnecessary interruptions without creating tension. Many leaders develop their habits in environments where visibility, hierarchy, and real-time updates were the primary indicators of progress. These habits persist even when more efficient tools exist, because familiar methods feel safer than unfamiliar ones. When you recognize the underlying reasons behind meeting-heavy behavior, you can respond with strategies that address the root causes rather than the symptoms. Hierarchy plays a significant role in shaping meeting culture. In traditional structures, managers were trained to equate physical presence with reliability, and meetings became the most direct way to confirm that work was moving forward. Written updates can feel incomplete or easy to overlook, so managers default to live conversations to maintain a sense of control. This preference is not always a reflection of distrust. It is often a continuation of the systems they learned early in their careers. When you understand this, it becomes easier to offer alternatives that preserve visibility without consuming large portions of the day. Meetings also function as rituals that reinforce structure and predictability. Regular meetings create a rhythm that helps managers feel connected to the work and the team. These rituals serve social and organizational purposes, even when the informational value is low. Changing them abruptly can feel disruptive, so managers may resist alternatives unless they see that the underlying needs, clarity, alignment, and reassurance are still being met. Offering structured summaries or predictable written updates can satisfy these needs while reducing the time spent in synchronous conversations. Another factor is the desire for control during uncertainty. When projects involve risk, ambiguity, or shifting priorities, managers often rely on meetings to gather information quickly and adjust plans in real time. Live discussions allow them to ask clarifying questions, redirect efforts, and prevent misunderstandings before they escalate. This instinct is practical, but it can lead to excessive meetings if not balanced with clear documentation and well-defined decision paths. Providing concise risk summaries or maintaining a transparent tracker can reduce the need for frequent meetings. Generational differences also influence meeting habits. Leaders who built their careers in face-to-face environments often view live conversation as the most reliable way to communicate nuance. They are accustomed to reading tone, body language, and immediate reactions, and they may worry that written updates lack context. Younger professionals, on the other hand, tend to prefer asynchronous tools that offer speed and traceability. Recognizing these differences allows you to choose communication methods that respect experience while still promoting efficiency. Emotional safety is another driver behind meeting-heavy behavior. Some managers schedule frequent meetings not because information is missing, but because they want reassurance that progress is steady and risks are under control. A live conversation provides immediate answers and reduces the fear of being surprised later. When you understand this, you can offer alternatives that provide the same sense of security, such as short daily summaries, clear next steps, or a shared dashboard that highlights progress. These tools reduce anxiety while preserving your ability to focus. Ambiguity is one of the fastest triggers for unnecessary meetings. When goals, responsibilities, or timelines are unclear, managers default to gathering people in a room to resolve the uncertainty. Meetings become a quick fix for problems that could have been prevented with clearer documentation. By providing well-defined objectives, explicit expectations, and structured updates, you can reduce the likelihood that ambiguity will lead to another meeting. Clarity is often the most effective way to prevent interruptions before they occur. Pressure from higher levels of leadership also shapes meeting behavior. Managers who must present regular updates to their own leaders often replicate the same patterns with their teams. They schedule meetings to gather information, confirm details, and ensure that nothing will be missed when they report upward. This creates a cascading effect where meeting habits flow from the top down. Offering concise, forwardable summaries can ease this pressure and reduce the need for repeated status sessions. Habit is another powerful force. When meetings have been the default solution for years, they become the path of least resistance. Even if a meeting is inefficient, it feels easier to schedule one than to redesign the communication process. Changing this pattern requires small, low-risk experiments that demonstrate the value of alternatives. When managers see that clarity improves and decisions move faster, they become more open to reducing meeting frequency. Understanding these dynamics gives you a practical advantage. Instead of pushing back against meetings directly, you can address the needs that drive them. You can offer visibility without requiring synchronous time, provide clarity that prevents unnecessary meetings, and create systems that reduce uncertainty. This approach allows you to protect your focus while maintaining strong relationships with the people who depend on your work. By aligning your communication with the motivations behind meeting-heavy habits, you create a more productive environment for both you and your manager. Chapter 3: Knowing when a meeting is truly necessary. Not every meeting is a waste of time, and not every conversation can be replaced with a message or a document. The challenge is that many workplaces treat meetings as the default option rather than a deliberate choice. When a meeting is used for the wrong purpose, it interrupts focus without producing meaningful progress. But when a meeting is used for the right purpose, it can accelerate decisions, resolve ambiguity, and create alignment that would take much longer through asynchronous channels. Understanding the difference is essential if you want to protect your time without appearing resistant or uncooperative. A meeting is most valuable when it leads to a decision that cannot be made effectively through written communication. Decisions that involve multiple perspectives, trade-offs, or real-time adjustments often benefit from a live conversation. These discussions allow people to test assumptions, clarify uncertainties, and respond to new information quickly. When the goal is to reach a shared conclusion, a meeting can shorten the path and reduce the risk of misinterpretation. The key is to ensure that the meeting is structured around the decision itself, not around updates that could have been shared beforehand. Collaboration is another legitimate reason to meet. Some types of work require collective thinking, especially when ideas need to be shaped, challenged, or combined. Brainstorming, design sessions, and problem-solving discussions often benefit from the energy and immediacy of a live exchange. These sessions work best when participants come prepared with context and when the meeting has a clear purpose, such as generating options or evaluating alternatives. Without that structure, collaboration meetings can drift into unproductive territory, consuming time without producing actionable outcomes. A meeting is also appropriate when the topic involves sensitive or emotionally complex issues. Conversations about conflict, performance, or interpersonal dynamics require tone, nuance, and empathy that are difficult to convey in writing. Live discussions allow people to ask clarifying questions, express concerns, and build understanding in ways that reduce the risk of escalation. These meetings should be handled with care, but they are often necessary to maintain trust and resolve issues constructively. Written communication can support these conversations, but it cannot replace them entirely. Urgency is another factor that can justify a meeting. When a decision must be made quickly and the information is incomplete or evolving, synchronous communication can prevent delays. A short meeting can align people faster than a long thread of messages, especially when the situation requires immediate action. However, urgency should not be used as a blanket justification for every meeting. Many issues that feel urgent can still be handled asynchronously if expectations are clear and response times are agreed upon. On the other hand, many meetings occur simply because information needs to be shared. Status updates, progress reports, and routine status update INS often fall into this category. These topics rarely require live conversation, and they can usually be handled more efficiently through structured written updates. When information is documented clearly, people can review it on their own time, reducing interruptions and preserving deep work. Meetings should be reserved for situations where the information leads directly to a decision or requires discussion that cannot happen effectively in writing. Another common reason for unnecessary meetings is the desire for reassurance. Managers may schedule meetings to confirm that work is on track, even when the information could be communicated through a brief summary. This behavior is understandable, but it creates a cycle where meetings become a substitute for visibility. Providing consistent, predictable updates can reduce the need for these sessions and build trust over time. When managers feel informed, they are less likely to rely on meetings as their primary source of clarity. Ambiguity is one of the biggest drivers of unnecessary meetings. When goals, expectations, or responsibilities are unclear, people often schedule a meeting to resolve the confusion. While this can be effective, it is often a sign that the underlying communication is incomplete. Clear documentation, well-defined objectives, and explicit next steps can prevent many of these meetings from being scheduled in the first place. When ambiguity is reduced, meetings become more purposeful and less frequent. To determine whether a meeting is necessary, it helps to ask a few simple questions. First, what is the desired outcome? If the goal is to make a decision, resolve a disagreement, or collaborate on a complex problem, a meeting may be appropriate. Second, can the same outcome be achieved through a written update or a shared document? If the answer is yes, a meeting is likely unnecessary. Third, who needs to be involved? If the meeting requires only 1 or 2 people, a quick call or message may be more efficient. These questions create a filter that helps you evaluate the value of each meeting before committing your time. When you do need a meeting, preparation is essential. A clear agenda, defined roles, and specific outcomes help ensure that the meeting stays focused and productive. Participants should know what is expected of them and what decisions need to be made. Without this structure, meetings can drift, leading to follow-up meetings that consume even more time. Preparation is not just a courtesy. It is a way to protect everyone's attention and ensure that the meeting achieves its purpose. Understanding when a meeting is necessary allows you to participate more intentionally and advocate for alternatives when appropriate. It also helps you communicate more effectively with your manager, especially when you need to decline or redirect a meeting request. By framing your response around outcomes rather than preferences, you show that your goal is to support progress, not avoid responsibility. This approach builds trust and positions you as someone who values clarity, efficiency, and thoughtful communication. These principles are explored in greater depth in How to Stay Productive When Your Boss Loves Meetings, where the full decision-making framework is laid out with additional examples and practical guidance. You can find the link to the book in the description if you want to explore the complete material and see how these ideas apply across different workplace scenarios. With this foundation in place, the next chapter shifts the focus toward communicating upward in ways that reduce unnecessary meetings while maintaining trust and clarity. Chapter 4: Communicating upward without creating conflict. Communicating with a manager who relies heavily on meetings requires a balance of clarity, respect, and strategic framing. The goal is not to challenge their authority or question their approach, but to guide the conversation toward methods that protect your time while still supporting their need for visibility. Many professionals hesitate to adjust communication patterns because they fear being misunderstood or appearing uncooperative. But upward communication is a skill, and when used thoughtfully, it allows you to influence expectations without creating tension. The first step is understanding what your manager values most. Some managers prioritize speed, others prioritize accuracy, and others prioritize predictability. When you tailor your communication to the value they care about, your suggestions feel aligned rather than oppositional. For example, if your manager values speed, you can frame asynchronous updates as a faster way to keep them informed. If they value predictability, you can emphasize how structured written updates reduce surprises. When your message supports their priorities, they are more open to alternatives that reduce unnecessary meetings. Clarity is essential when communicating upward. Managers often schedule meetings because they feel uncertain about progress or next steps. When your updates are vague, incomplete, or scattered, they fill the gaps with meetings. Clear communication reduces that impulse. A concise summary of what you've completed, what you're working on, and what you need from them can eliminate the need for a status update conversation. When your updates consistently answer the questions they would normally ask in a meeting, you build trust in your communication style. Predictability also plays a major role. Managers feel more comfortable reducing meetings when they know they will receive updates at reliable intervals. A weekly summary, a structured progress note, or a shared tracker can provide the consistency they need. Predictability reduces anxiety, and when anxiety decreases, the number of meetings decreases with it. You are not just providing information, you are providing stability. That stability becomes the foundation for a more efficient communication rhythm. Tone matters as much as content. When suggesting alternatives to meetings, your tone should be collaborative rather than corrective. Instead of saying that a meeting is unnecessary, you can frame your suggestion around efficiency or clarity. For example, you might say that you can provide a written update that covers everything they need, or that you can prepare a summary that allows them to review the information at their convenience. This approach respects their role while still guiding the conversation toward a more productive method. Another important aspect of upward communication is anticipating questions before they arise. When you proactively address potential concerns, you reduce the likelihood that your manager will schedule a meeting to clarify them. Anticipation shows maturity and foresight, and it signals that you understand the broader context of the work. When your updates consistently answer the why, how, and what's next, your manager begins to rely on your communication rather than on meetings. Documentation is one of the most powerful tools you can use. When information is written clearly and stored in a place your manager can access, it reduces the need for repeated conversations. Documentation creates transparency, and transparency reduces meetings. It also protects you from misunderstandings, because the information is visible and traceable. When your manager sees that everything they need is already available, they are less likely to interrupt your workflow with additional meetings. Setting boundaries upward requires subtlety. You cannot simply decline meetings without offering an alternative. Instead, you can redirect the conversation by proposing a more efficient method. For example, you might suggest sending a summary before the meeting to see if it answers all their questions. Often, the summary resolves the issue and the meeting becomes unnecessary. This approach allows you to protect your time without appearing resistant or dismissive. It is also helpful to understand your manager's communication style. Some managers prefer brief updates, while others prefer detailed explanations. Some want bullet points, while others want narrative context. When you match their style, your communication feels familiar and easy to process. Familiarity reduces friction, and reduced friction makes it easier to shift away from unnecessary meetings. You are not changing their preferences. You are aligning with them in a way that supports both of your goals. Finally, upward communication is most effective when it is consistent. One clear update will not change your manager's habits, but a pattern of reliable communication will. Over time, they begin to trust your updates, rely on your summaries, and feel less need to schedule meetings. Consistency builds credibility, and credibility gives you the influence needed to shape how communication happens. When your manager sees that your approach leads to better clarity and fewer surprises, they naturally adjust their expectations. Communicating upward without creating conflict is not about avoiding meetings entirely. It is about creating a communication environment where meetings are used intentionally rather than reflexively. When you combine clarity, predictability, anticipation, and respect, you create a structure that supports your manager's needs while protecting your ability to focus. This balance allows you to work more effectively and reduces the friction that often arises in meeting-heavy environments. Chapter 5. Setting boundaries without damaging trust. Setting boundaries in a meeting-heavy environment is one of the most important skills you can develop, especially if you want to protect your focus without creating friction. Many professionals hesitate to set boundaries because they fear appearing uncooperative or difficult to manage. But boundaries are not barriers. They are structures that allow you to work effectively while still supporting the needs of your team and your manager. When boundaries are communicated clearly and respectfully, they strengthen trust rather than weaken it. The first step in setting boundaries is understanding your own capacity. You cannot communicate limits if you do not know where those limits are. This requires an honest assessment of your workload, your deadlines, and the type of work that requires uninterrupted focus. When you understand what you need to perform at a high level, you can communicate those needs with confidence. Boundaries become easier to express when they are grounded in the reality of your responsibilities rather than in personal preference. Once you understand your capacity, the next step is to communicate proactively. Boundaries are most effective when they are shared before problems arise. For example, you might let your manager know that you reserve certain hours for deep work, or that you prefer written updates for routine matters. Proactive communication prevents misunderstandings and reduces the likelihood that your boundaries will be interpreted as resistance. It also shows that you are thinking ahead and taking responsibility for your workflow. Framing is essential when communicating boundaries. Instead of presenting them as restrictions, you can frame them as strategies that support better outcomes. For example, you might explain that uninterrupted time allows you to complete work faster or with fewer errors. When boundaries are tied to performance, they feel aligned with the goals of the team rather than in conflict with them. This framing helps your manager see the value of your approach and reduces the risk of pushback. Consistency is another key element. Boundaries lose their effectiveness when they are applied inconsistently. If you decline meetings one week but accept every request the next, your manager may become confused about your availability. Consistency builds credibility, and credibility builds trust. When your behavior aligns with your stated boundaries, people begin to respect them naturally. Over time, your boundaries become part of the team's expectations rather than exceptions that need to be negotiated. Flexibility also plays an important role. Boundaries should be firm enough to protect your time but flexible enough to accommodate genuine needs. There will be moments when a meeting is necessary, even if it falls within your protected time. When you show that you can adapt when the situation requires it, your boundaries feel reasonable rather than rigid. Flexibility demonstrates that you are committed to the team's success, not just your own preferences. Another important aspect of setting boundaries is offering alternatives. When you decline a meeting, you should provide a clear and helpful substitute. For example, you might offer to send a summary, provide an update in writing, or answer questions asynchronously. Alternatives show that you are still engaged and willing to contribute, even if you cannot attend the meeting. This approach maintains trust and ensures that your boundaries do not create gaps in communication. Documentation can support your boundaries as well. When expectations, updates, and decisions are clearly documented, there is less need for follow-up meetings. Documentation creates transparency and reduces the likelihood of misunderstandings. It also reinforces your boundaries by showing that you are providing the information your manager needs, even without attending every meeting. When your documentation is reliable, your boundaries become easier for others to accept. Emotional intelligence is essential when setting boundaries. You need to be aware of how your message might be received and adjust your tone accordingly. A calm, respectful tone helps ensure that your boundaries are interpreted as professional rather than personal. It also helps maintain positive relationships, which are crucial when navigating a meeting-heavy environment. Boundaries communicated with empathy are more likely to be respected and less likely to create tension. Finally, setting boundaries is an ongoing process. As your responsibilities change, your boundaries may need to evolve. Regular reflection helps you determine whether your current approach is still effective or whether adjustments are needed. Boundaries are not static. They are tools that help you manage your time and energy in a way that supports both your productivity and your well-being. When you treat boundaries as part of your professional development, they become easier to maintain and more valuable over time. Setting boundaries without damaging trust requires clarity, consistency, and respect. When you communicate your needs thoughtfully and provide alternatives that support the team, your boundaries become a natural part of how you work. They allow you to protect your focus while still contributing effectively, and they help create a healthier, more sustainable workflow in environments where meetings are the default. Over time, these boundaries not only improve your productivity but also strengthen your relationships and your credibility within the organization. Chapter 6: Reducing meetings through better documentation. Documentation is one of the most effective tools for reducing unnecessary meetings, yet it is often overlooked in fast-paced environments. Many teams rely heavily on verbal updates, ad hoc conversations, and recurring meetings because information is scattered or incomplete. When documentation is weak, meetings become the default method for gathering clarity. But when documentation is strong, it becomes a source of stability that reduces confusion, prevents repeated questions, and eliminates the need for constant synchronous communication. Good documentation does not slow work down. It accelerates it by making information accessible and reliable. The first benefit of strong documentation is transparency. When information is clearly written and easy to find, people no longer need to schedule meetings to understand what is happening. Transparency reduces friction because it removes the uncertainty that often triggers meetings. A well-maintained document, tracker, or summary can answer questions before they arise. This shifts communication from reactive to proactive, allowing teams to operate with fewer interruptions and more confidence. Documentation also supports alignment. Many meetings exist solely to ensure that everyone is on the same page, but alignment can be achieved more efficiently through structured written updates. When goals, timelines, responsibilities, and decisions are documented, alignment becomes a natural byproduct of the workflow. People can review the information at their own pace, revisit it when needed, and reference it without relying on memory. This reduces the need for repeated explanations and follow-up meetings that consume valuable time. Another advantage of documentation is continuity. In environments where work moves quickly, verbal updates can be forgotten or misinterpreted. Documentation creates a stable record that persists beyond the moment of conversation. This continuity is especially important when team members join, leave, or shift roles. Instead of holding onboarding meetings or repeating the same explanations, teams can rely on documentation to provide context. Continuity reduces the burden on individuals and ensures that knowledge is not lost when people are unavailable. Documentation also strengthens decision-making. When decisions are recorded clearly, teams avoid revisiting the same discussions or questioning past choices. A documented decision log prevents confusion and reduces the likelihood of meetings being scheduled to reconfirm what was already agreed upon. It also helps teams understand the reasoning behind decisions, which improves accountability and reduces the need for clarification meetings. Decision-making becomes more efficient when the history is visible and accessible. Another important aspect of documentation is reducing dependency on individuals. When information lives only in someone's head, meetings become necessary to extract it. This creates bottlenecks and slows down progress. Documentation distributes knowledge across the team, allowing work to continue even when key people are unavailable. Reducing dependency not only prevents unnecessary meetings but also strengthens the resilience of the team. Work becomes more predictable, and communication becomes more balanced. Documentation also improves asynchronous collaboration. When information is written clearly, people can contribute, review, and respond without needing to be in the same place at the same time. This flexibility reduces the need for synchronous meetings and allows work to move forward continuously. Asynchronous collaboration is especially valuable in distributed teams, where time zones and schedules make frequent meetings impractical. Documentation becomes the shared foundation that keeps everyone aligned regardless of location. To make documentation effective, it must be structured and intentional. A document that is cluttered, outdated, or difficult to navigate will not reduce meetings. It will create more confusion. Effective documentation is concise, organized, and regularly updated. It should answer the questions people commonly ask and provide the context needed to move work forward. When documentation is treated as a living part of the workflow rather than an afterthought, it becomes a powerful tool for reducing interruptions. Consistency is essential. Documentation loses its value when it is updated sporadically or only during moments of urgency. A consistent rhythm, whether daily, weekly, or tied to project milestones, ensures that information remains accurate and trustworthy. Consistency builds confidence, and confidence reduces the impulse to schedule meetings for reassurance. When people trust the documentation, they rely on it instead of defaulting to synchronous communication. Finally, documentation works best when it is integrated into the team's culture. It should not be seen as extra work but as part of how the team operates. When leaders model good documentation habits, the rest of the team follows. When documentation becomes a shared expectation, Meetings naturally decrease because the information people need is already available. Over time, documentation becomes a quiet but powerful force that shapes how communication happens and how work flows. Reducing meetings through better documentation is not about writing more. It is about writing what matters. When information is clear, accessible, and reliable, meetings become purposeful rather than habitual. Documentation creates a foundation of clarity that supports deep work, reduces interruptions, and strengthens collaboration. It allows teams to move faster with fewer meetings and gives individuals the space they need to produce meaningful work. These ideas are explored further in How to Stay Productive When Your Boss Loves Meetings, where the documentation framework is expanded with practical examples and real-world applications. You can find the link to the book in the description if you'd like to explore the complete approach in more depth. In the next chapter, the focus shifts toward building personal systems that help you maintain productivity even when meetings cannot be reduced. Chapter 7: Building personal systems that protect your focus. Even in environments where meetings cannot be fully reduced, you can still maintain a high level of productivity by building personal systems that protect your focus. These systems act as buffers, helping you manage interruptions, organize your priorities, and maintain momentum even when your schedule is fragmented. Personal systems are not rigid routines. They are flexible structures that support your ability to think clearly and work efficiently. When designed intentionally, they allow you to stay grounded in your most important work despite the demands around you. One of the most effective systems you can build is a structured planning rhythm. Many people start their day by reacting to messages, requests, and unexpected tasks, which immediately puts them in a defensive posture. A planning rhythm reverses that dynamic. By taking a few minutes at the start of each day to identify your top priorities, you create a sense of direction that guides your decisions. This clarity helps you navigate interruptions more effectively because you always know what you are trying to accomplish. Another important system is time blocking. Time blocking does not require a perfectly controlled schedule. It simply creates intentional windows for different types of work. For example, you might reserve certain hours for deep work, others for administrative tasks, and others for communication. Even if meetings interrupt these blocks, the structure helps you return to your priorities more quickly. Time blocking reduces decision fatigue and provides a framework that supports focus throughout the day. Task management is another essential component of a strong personal system. When tasks are scattered across emails, messages, and mental notes, it becomes difficult to stay organized. A centralized task list or project tracker helps you maintain visibility over your responsibilities. This visibility reduces stress and prevents important work from slipping through the cracks. It also allows you to make more informed decisions about which meetings are necessary and which can be replaced with asynchronous updates. Energy management is equally important. Productivity is not just about time. It is about the quality of attention you bring to your work. Understanding your natural energy patterns allows you to schedule demanding tasks during your peak hours and reserve lighter tasks for lower energy periods. This alignment increases efficiency and reduces the frustration that comes from trying to do complex work when your mind is fatigued. Energy-based scheduling is a subtle but powerful way to protect your focus. Another valuable system is creating boundaries around communication. Constant notifications and real-time messages can fragment your attention even more than meetings. Establishing specific times to check messages helps you stay present in your work. This does not mean ignoring communication. It means managing it intentionally. When you control the flow of information rather than reacting to it instantly, you maintain a stronger sense of focus and reduce the cognitive load of constant context switching. Reflection is another key element of personal systems. Taking time at the end of the day or week to review what worked, what didn't, and what needs adjustment helps you refine your approach. Reflection turns experience into insight, allowing you to improve your systems over time. It also helps you identify patterns that contribute to unnecessary meetings or interruptions, giving you the information you need to make strategic changes. Environmental design also plays a role in protecting your focus. Your physical and digital environments influence your ability to concentrate. A clean workspace, organized files, and minimized digital clutter reduce distractions and create a sense of calm. Small adjustments, such as closing unused tabs, organizing your desktop, or setting up a dedicated workspace, can have a significant impact on your ability to stay focused during fragmented days. Finally, personal systems are most effective when they are adaptable. Rigid systems break under pressure, but flexible systems adjust to changing demands. The goal is not to create a perfect routine, but to build a set of habits and structures that support your productivity regardless of circumstances. Adaptability allows you to maintain focus even when meetings increase, deadlines shift, or unexpected challenges arise. Personal systems give you stability in environments that are constantly changing. Building personal systems that protect your focus is not about controlling every minute of your day. It is about creating a foundation that supports clarity, reduces stress, and helps you stay aligned with your most important work. These systems allow you to navigate meeting-heavy environments with confidence and maintain a sense of progress even when your schedule is unpredictable. Over time, they become essential tools that strengthen your productivity and resilience. These concepts are expanded further in How to Stay Productive When Your Boss Loves Meetings, where the full personal systems framework is broken down with examples and practical exercises. You can find the link to the book in the description if you'd like to explore the complete approach in more detail. In the next chapter, the focus turns toward managing expectations with colleagues and stakeholders so that your productivity systems can function smoothly within a collaborative environment. Chapter 8: Managing Expectations with Colleagues and Stakeholders. Managing expectations with colleagues and stakeholders is essential in environments where meetings are frequent and communication is often fragmented. Even if you have strong personal systems and clear boundaries, your productivity still depends on how well others understand what you can deliver, when you can deliver it, and how you prefer to communicate. Expectations shape behavior, and when expectations are unclear, people fill the gaps with assumptions, follow UPS, and unnecessary meetings. Clear expectations reduce friction and create a smoother, more predictable workflow for everyone involved. The first step in managing expectations is establishing clarity around your responsibilities. When people understand what you own, what you support, and what falls outside your scope, they are less likely to schedule meetings that do not require your involvement. Clarity prevents duplication of effort and reduces the number of conversations needed to determine who is responsible for what. It also helps you protect your time by giving you a clear basis for declining or redirecting requests that do not align with your role. Another important aspect is communicating timelines realistically. Many unnecessary meetings occur because people are unsure when work will be completed or when updates will be available. When you provide clear timelines and update them when necessary, you reduce the anxiety that often leads to meetings. Realistic timelines build trust, and trust reduces the need for synchronous communication. When people know what to expect, they are more comfortable giving you space to work. Consistency is essential when managing expectations. If you communicate clearly one week but disappear the next, people will revert to meetings as their primary method of staying informed. Consistency builds reliability, and reliability builds confidence. When your colleagues know they can count on your updates, they stop trying to fill the gaps with extra meetings. Over time, your communication rhythm becomes part of the team's workflow, reducing the need for constant coordination. Another key element is setting expectations around communication channels. Not every conversation requires a meeting, and not every update needs to happen in real time. When you clarify which topics should be handled asynchronously and which require live discussion, you help others choose the most efficient method. For example, you might explain that routine updates are best shared in writing, while complex decisions may require a brief call. These guidelines help people communicate with you more effectively and reduce unnecessary interruptions. Managing expectations also involves being transparent about your availability. When people do not know when you are accessible, they may schedule meetings at inconvenient times or send urgent messages that disrupt your focus. Sharing your preferred working hours, response times, and deep work blocks helps others plan around your schedule. Transparency creates predictability, and predictability reduces the need for last-minute meetings or follow UPS. Another important skill is communicating constraints without sounding defensive. When you are overloaded or facing competing priorities, it is important to explain the situation clearly and calmly. People are more understanding when they know the context behind your decisions. Communicating constraints helps others adjust their expectations and prevents misunderstandings that lead to unnecessary meetings. It also reinforces your credibility by showing that you are thoughtful about your commitments. Collaboration becomes smoother when expectations are aligned early. Before starting a project or task, taking a few minutes to clarify goals, deliverables, communication methods, and timelines can prevent countless meetings later. Early alignment reduces ambiguity and ensures that everyone is working from the same assumptions. This proactive approach saves time and creates a more efficient workflow for the entire team. Feedback also plays a role in managing expectations. When you share what helps you work effectively and what creates unnecessary friction, you give your colleagues the information they need to collaborate with you more smoothly. Feedback does not need to be formal or critical. It can be as simple as explaining that written updates help you stay organized or that you prefer to review materials before a meeting. Small adjustments in communication can have a significant impact on productivity. Finally, managing expectations is an ongoing process. As projects evolve and priorities shift, expectations need to be revisited and adjusted. Regular meetings, brief, structured, and purposeful, help ensure that everyone remains aligned without resorting to excessive meetings. When expectations are maintained over time, collaboration becomes more fluid, and the need for synchronous communication decreases naturally. Managing expectations with colleagues and stakeholders is not about controlling others. It is about creating clarity that supports effective collaboration. When expectations are clear, communication becomes smoother, meetings become more purposeful, and your ability to focus improves. Over time, this clarity strengthens relationships, reduces misunderstandings, and creates a more productive environment for everyone involved. As you reach the end of this book, the intention is not to offer a dramatic conclusion, but to leave you with a sense of clarity about how to move forward in meeting-heavy environments. Productivity in these settings is rarely about controlling every part of your schedule or eliminating every interruption. It is about understanding the patterns that shape your workday and building approaches that help you stay grounded, focused, and effective despite the demands around you. The ideas you've explored throughout these chapters are meant to support that stability. Meetings will always be part of modern work. Some will be necessary, some will be helpful, and some will simply exist because of habit or organizational culture. What matters is not the number of meetings you attend, but the way you navigate them. When you communicate clearly, set thoughtful boundaries, document your work, and manage expectations with intention, you create space for meaningful progress. You shift from reacting to your environment to shaping how you operate within it. The systems you build for yourself, your planning rhythms, your communication habits, your documentation practices, become anchors that support you even when your schedule becomes unpredictable. These systems do not need to be perfect. They simply need to be consistent enough to give you direction and flexible enough to adapt when circumstances change. Over time, they become part of how you think and work, reducing stress and increasing your ability to focus on what matters most. The real value of these practices is not in the individual techniques, but in the mindset they reinforce. Productivity is not a race or a performance. It is a relationship with your time, your attention, and your responsibilities. When you approach your work with clarity and intention, you create an environment where you can contribute meaningfully without feeling overwhelmed by constant demands. You learn to protect your focus not by withdrawing from collaboration, but by engaging with it more thoughtfully. As you apply the ideas from this book, remember that progress happens gradually. You do not need to transform your entire workflow overnight. Small adjustments, clearer communication, better documentation, more intentional planning accumulate over time. Each step strengthens your ability to work effectively in environments where meetings are frequent and expectations are high. The goal is not perfection, but sustainability. A more complete discussion of these ideas appears in How to Stay Productive When Your Boss Loves Meetings, where the full framework behind managing meeting-heavy environments is explored in greater depth. You can find the link to the book in the description if you'd like to continue learning and apply the complete system.